a male voice outside the window. I heard Rick, um, who just red alerted me. And I think that was a result of updating, uploading some data. So my name is Omma Rampersad. It's 2:59 p.m., April 16, 2020. So actually, I was verbalizing inside of my home about um, what is on right now under COVID-19 and these signals represent. Because right now, my left obliques is hurting and burning, and those numbers show it. It's pointed to my stomach, which is this. That's me. So red alert, it jumped from 200 to close to 2 EF. And the blood pressure jumped and then started fluctuating at a higher range immediately. So I'm being experimented with at 25 Bamberg Circle. So I heard that I'm going to bury it. I'm going to be buried this time. And the cops are looking to charge me with something. And this time I will have no bail. The last time was a false charge, and I was put on bail for no reason, and I got myself out of it. I was on my own recognizance, and during that time I was working. But while I was working, I was being surveilled. And of course, the cops were involved in that because I was being flagged based on lies that PK, the pimp who sexually harassed me on the phone, and he had to cover his trafficking. So, in order to cover the remote trafficking, which these numbers are showing right now, this is remote rape, these numbers, he had to flag me. So, this is the whole idea behind these signals. So, I was verbalizing about PK and the Chinese traffickers and other traffickers as well, who are given access to these technologies, directed energy weapons, that will kill and give heart attacks. And I demonstrated that yesterday. And can give all the symptoms of a flu and other diseases such as diabetes and so on. Are they playing a role in bumping up the numbers for the COVID-19 crisis, quote unquote? Are they creating the crisis? Is there a Chinese connection between the companies that is setting up the 5G system and all the fights that the US was having with the Chinese company that was fighting for the contract, bidding for the contract, and was threatening people all over the place? If you don't do this, this is going to happen. If you don't do that, that's going to happen. And since the virus came from China, my question was, is there a connection between all of these factors? So when there's all kinds of tweets on my Twitter feed that talks about being tracked and getting alerts if you're around somebody who's been tested positive, which means, of course, that everybody's going to be tracked. So we are going to be surveilled under this crisis. I would like to serve myself up as a good example of somebody who can go out and, of course, keep your distance and wear a mask and just live life normally. Touch all the surfaces, wash your hands when you come home, and just live life normally. And just boost your immune system, live a healthy lifestyle, But you would be a good example. I'd be a good example of somebody who could do that and survive. Now, as far as vulnerable people getting infected by people living their lives normally, then that is the case for a common cold. That is the case for any other disease. It's nothing unusual. People with compromised immune system and who are really sick normally die when there are, epidemics. That's a normal occurrence. It's a way of controlling the population. Sounds harsh, but that's true. So, when old, sick people get the cold, they sometimes die, and they die at a higher rate. So it would make sense to keep the sick, aging population protected and let the economy go on. Since it's not, a type of disease like, Ebola that will cause death in a matter of hours. It's a variation of the common cold, a bad one, but a common cold. So my question is the cure worse than the disease? And I think this has been asked by many, because the fallout of the cure is killing and torturing millions and millions and millions and millions of people around the world. People who live in India, people who live in Africa. There are millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of people around the world who are going to die for lack of food, lack of water, and things that they would normally get when the economy is running normally. And they would just die. So back to the question, is the cure worse than the disease? And in this case, the answer, of course, is yes. So should the economy be opened up while protecting the vulnerable? Well, of course, protect the old people as you normally would do in any situation. So, and open the economy. So why close it down? Doesn't make sense, right? Especially since more than 50% of the people who are passing away are older, vulnerable people. And there is a good chance that this could be part of a conspiracy by another country to destroy our economy and to put a system in place, or maybe a number of companies, maybe some sort of a group. Then we hear the New World Order, who knows, to put a system in place that we all get surveilled and tracked, and data is collected about us on a continuous basis, and it's fed into a computer, and we're going to be monitored and tracked and managed like livestock by our employers, but mainly by the government, who are going to be reporting into this committee that we're going to call, or that I suspect is going to be called the New World Order. And it's all going to be mechanized, and it's going to be computerized, and everybody's going to be accounted for all the time. So what I've been tweeting about in the building, and the people who are involved in informing on me, the snitches who are contracted after flagging me on based on a suspicion, which is really lies, to run the experiment and to traffic. This is a template that's being used in the building. So this template is exactly the same thing that is being used, if you look at it closely, in the crisis. So Omma Rampersad is flagged, and then there's a committee, whether it's a global committee, whether it's a Canadian committee, whether it's a committee based in Ontario, whether it's a committee based in the building, whether it's a committee based in the workplace. But there are groups, people who are going to put you on the bus, get feedback constantly, and is going to increase the power, decrease the power, as I'm showing right now, based on the feedback, and then manage you in a real time based on surveillance, 24/7 surveillance in and out of your home, anywhere you are. So this is the template that's being used at 25 Bamberg Circle, and you'd see see those marks on my hand there, and my hand is was hit last night, and it's quite sore and it's slightly swollen. Um, my hand is hit as I work on the computer when I tweet, because I'm not supposed to tweet and I'm not supposed to expose this experiment. Because this experiment, I'm suspecting, based on my observations, is a template. It's an agenda, a step-by-step agenda that brings down and destroys somebody, a person, a country, the world. Same agenda. So you put blocks in the way, and you have this report that is circulating about Omma Rampersad, and it isolates Omma Rampersad. And this committee determines where you're going to work, how much you're going to earn, how much, how many people are going to interact with you, you know, how much social life you're going to have, whether you get to leave your house or not, because if you leave, you're going to be red alerted and the power is going to be turned up. So it's exactly the same template that is unfolding on the COVID-19 crisis. So you're going to be alerted. There were 2 alerts. You're going to be tracked. The Omma Rampersad is isolated and housebound way before this. So what's happening on the COVID-19? We are housebound. We are isolated. We have to keep apart. We can't visit. We can't have parties. You can't go to dinner. Everything is closed. If you go to the park, you're being driven out, as Omma Rampersad is being lynched. So too, you're being lynched from the park. The cops are ticketing you, giving you $1,000 ticket. You're being, in my opinion, you're being degraded by being tested and labeled as somebody who's carrying a disease, and that label is going to be following you for a lifetime. So you're now a diseased person, even though you don't have any symptoms. You're positive, COVID-19 positive, and somebody in the government is going to be knocking on your door, checking up on you. And not only that, the government now is going to be owning, they are partly own, partially owned, I should say. Your company that you work for is going to be partially owned by the government, because the government is now loaning the companies that was brought down by the crisis. Essentially, it was brought down by the decision to call an emergency, a state of emergency, and bring everything to a standstill, and have all these people starve, millions and millions and millions of people starve. So it was made to happen, just didn't necessarily have to happen, but it was made to happen by negligence and the way it was handled. It could have been contained in China, or the borders should have been closed ages before it was done, and people should have been notified before. So were these mistakes, or were they somehow the information was intentionally not given? Conspiracy. Conspiracies, of course, are very, very real in our world, especially if you're fighting with countries and policies and so on, that has a history of engaging in predatory practices and while negotiating, and has absolutely no regard for human rights and so on. So there is a parallel between the template that's being used in the building, was my point. Defamation, a defamation campaign, an accumulation of file, data collection, dissemination of information anywhere you are, which is going to happen if you're positive, everybody around you is going to know that you're positive, COVID-19 positive. It's going to be in your record forever and ever. The government is going to be tracking you anywhere you go. You're going to be tracked globally. You're being chased out of parks. You're being chased out of the streets if you go too many times out of your house. You're chased back in, just like I am, as a target. So, in effect, the whole world is being targeted using exactly the same agenda. So my point is the template that was used to bring down Omma Rampersad and to have her surveil 24/7, collect data, put blocks in her way, put her in financial distress, and I'm speaking in third person deliberately, um, put her in financial distress deliberately, then offer loans and offer jobs, which are really informants who are going to monitor me on behalf of the person who have the contract, subcontractors, and who really are going to be monitoring me by accessing me remotely, which these signals are demonstrating right here, and raping me at night. They'll be accessing me 24/7. And they'll be subcontracting as well. So they can bring in any number of people to look at me while I sleep at night and while I live inside of my home. And these signals are demonstrating right now what I'm talking about. So the left side of my body is being hit and I'm in pain. And the pain is continuing and is increasing in intensity because I am doing what I'm doing. I'm exposing it. So the number is 127/84. And the pulse went down to 97. So there's a lot of, once I posted the last data, my Excel spreadsheet, um, the reading jumped. So the last reading was at 212 was 111/69. Then the power went up. So the pressure went to 124/84. 122/82 went down because the power is fluctuating up and down. 115/80, 113/79, 118/79. And the ones that I did during this video, 122/82 and 127/84. The heart rate 71, 68, 72, 68, 72, 70, 67. So it's fluctuating from 67 to 72. I'm sitting, I haven't been active for the last at least 2 hours. So I've been sitting right here doing this study here. So as the pain increases, these numbers, see the RF reading? It's 4.4, and the EF reading is pulsing through up to 2000 plus. So the RF reading for 3.8, 3.9, 4.2. So I'm in pain. I am in pain. And yesterday the power was turned up so high, I almost got a heart attack. So 75, the RF reading went up suddenly. So the power went up again. And that was the left shoulder. The left shoulder. So the account is being monitored globally, meaning that anybody around the world can sign in. And it's either a system that's been used by the subcontractors, or it's um, it's a military system, a global military system that anybody around the world can log into and access me inside of my home. If that is true, and I was working in all these companies, and the companies had a contract, and they were surveilling me based on using this link and this password that accessed a government website, then of course that is very traceable, and it would prove that I am being experimented with. So 124 over 82, and the heart rate dropped a little to 66. I'm going to take it one more time, and it's been 20 minutes. So the left side is really hurting. And if this continues, then I will get an irregular heartbeat. Um, Notification on my phone. So the chest actually, the heart actually is tagged. The heart is tagged. So 123 over 88, and there's a yellow mark there, as you could tell. You see that yellow mark? And if this continues, then I will, and the signals went over 2000 there, the EF reading. So so the idea of course is to get up and stop doing this, but I'm just demonstrating that when millimeter wave technology is used, and microwave technology is used, and the power is turned up, you can get a heart attack and drop dead. So 5G is using millimeter wave technology. The antennas are close to you, 500 meters apart. If the power is turned up, and one of the countries that has 5G already came out and said, a government official already came out and said they're going to use it for, that's only the start. What I suspect is going to happen is they're going to get rid of the police. We're going to not need the police force anymore. They're going to use the 5G system to police by this grid that would be controlled by another computer. But initially, it's going to be controlled by people. And so right now, a good example of the people controlling the system, or you, is the committee that is in the building, or the committee that's in the workplace, or the committee that's globally based. But instead of having these people, you'd have a computer, because a computer would be monitoring you 24/7 and adjusting the way you're treated, and the power level of these microwaves as you go about your business. You're going to be monitored, and you're going to be disciplined along the way, according to a program that was fed into the computer that your master, that the person that owns you, wants. And then you're going to be passed along to another master, and these are going to be people who are ruling the world, basically. There's going to be a very small minority of people who's going to be behind these computers, and you're going to be passed around. Meanwhile, you're going to be common to everybody else on Earth, because you're going to have a chip, and anybody who could read the chip is going to know everything about you. This is where it's going. And it's not going to happen in 10 years. It's going to happen very quickly under the flag of COVID-19 and all the other breakouts that we're going to have. And where Bill Gates already talked about this. There is going to be others, either Corona or or some other pandemic, which is going to bring us down to baseline. So we're going to be, it's kind of like a whack-a-mole, like a whack-a-mole system, where every time we are back to normal, quote unquote, we're going to be brought back down by another outbreak, and we're going to be whacked right down back in our head, and whack-a-mole, you're going to go right down until there is nothing left. You're going to be whacked until you're buried 6 feet under. 125/88. So how do I know that? Well, that's the template that's being used by PK, the Chinese trafficker, who says he's working quote unquote for the government. Um, and don't do anything stupid. That was a threat, like doing this. So the government, well, of course, he's an informant with the cops, and he's flagging me with others in the building. So the people he's working for are traffickers, criminals, and are looking at me inside of my home and knows the link and the password. If a military system is being used, it's being abused, really, in my case. But Omma Rampersad is a target and an onwarding experimentee. So the reason people like me are chosen is to run experiments until they die. Very interesting, though, that under COVID-19, people are dropping dead like flies. There is one case where I read where the guy was hit. Well, he said he had a headache, and he just fell over, keeled over, unconscious. Took he was taken to the doctor in the hospital, and he was diagnosed with COVID-19. And lack of oxygen in the blood. Well, when you turn up the power, you absolutely have lack of oxygen in your blood. Absolutely. Magda, last name Havas. Magda Havas, excuse me, has a very good website detailing all of these effects. When you're exposed to these types of these levels of radiation, the thickness of your blood increases, and the red cells clumps together, and the clumping diminishes the ability of the red cells to transport oxygen. So of course, you're going to have a lack of oxygen in your system. Is it a conspiracy? So one more time, and I'm going to close this off. So I'm in pain, and as you can tell with these numbers, and I wouldn't be surprised if I got an irregular heartbeat here, because my heart is tagged. The left shoulder blade, the left shoulder, the left chest, the left obliques are just absolutely painful. It's a satanic agenda, in other words, because what I just described is an absolute possession of somebody. Governments are supposed to manage the country at a certain level that we voted them in to make certain decisions. There is no way that we voted these government officials in, or politicians, to put a system in that possesses you. That's enslavement. It's enslavement. Because essentially, if you're being monitored 24/7, it's enslavement. And it's very interesting that the older people are being killed off by this COVID-19. If you wanted to put a system in place, and you're trying to bring in, 90-year-olds that has a memory of, the way it was when there was absolutely no computers, and some of them lived so long there wasn't even electricity in some cases. You don't want that memory, the people with this memory, to contaminate the younger people who are going to be brought into the system. They're going to be trained into this system, and they're going to be trained to like it, because they will not know any other system. This is the only thing they would know. But in order to do that, you have to get rid of the people with a memory of having a family, that having parties, having a social life, having close contact with human beings rather than robots. These people are going to contaminate. They're going to contaminate the system that's being brought in. So these people are not wanted. So we're going to start, I'm suspecting that it's going to start with the 90-year-olds and the 80-year-olds dying. And then, of course, it's going to be the 65-year-olds and the 60-year-olds. And then we're going to hit the 50-year-olds. And we're not going to do it in 10 years. We're going to do it in 2 to 3 years, because there's going to be all kinds of other breakouts that's going to affect, all kinds of people out there of different age category, because there's going to be mutations of this virus that is going to affect different age groups as the virus mutates. I suspect. This is me just thinking out loud, based on my experience at 25 Bamberg Circle and the Chinese connection to it, and the Chinese connection to the quote unquote government that he's dealing with, PK, and the cops who is helping him. I suspect. Talk to you another time. So the pain has eased up a bit, but my back is really killing me. Talk to you another time.